What cultural shift happened without people noticing? Freely giving up your personal information, email, name, occupation, and fingerprints for starters. These giant corporations like Facebook, Google, and Apple have it all, and we willingly give it to them for the most part. My GF showed me a meme earlier today. Gist was 1996. Parents say don't trust anybody or anything on the internet. At present day, parents ask if you heard about obviously untrue thing X on Facebook today. I've seen similar ones along the lines of 1996. Parents say not to get rides from strangers or meet anyone online. 2017. Gets rides from strangers found online. The rise of the internet meme followed by its gradual acceptance into mainstream culture is also a pretty big shift that's happened in recent years. Close friend is a doctor. His answer surprised me. How long it takes people to die nowadays. He was telling me about treating gunshot victims and injuries from horrible car crashes. He didn't seem fazed by it. I was kind of WTH, and his big WTH was how long we can keep people alive. How in many cases, it takes people years to die. He is most disturbed by this. As he put it, when he loses a gunshot patient, he knows he did all that he could to save a life, but crap happens. Right, you've got to move on. It sucks, but there's little moral ambiguity about it. When dealing with a semi-vegetative person, the moral questions surrounding pulling the plug, continuing treatments, working with families really get to him, and there are no easy answers. This is a relatively new phenomenon in medicine. Not extending life, but prolonging death. That's what my dad says about end-of-life care after spending nearly 30 years in medicine. He also saw his mother lose her mind to Alzheimer's and his mother-in-law wither away to nothing recently. I genuinely does not want to extend his own suffering when his time comes. No one ever has to get lost ever again with smartphone maps, and I can barely remember what it was like before. As a teacher, students with constant access to their grades, and parents with constant demands. Toward the end of my high school career, parents received access to all grades and upcoming assignments on our online portal. Luckily my parents trusted me to get things done, but it caused a lot of stress for some students. Constant availability. Used to be I'd try to call a friend and it would ring and ring and ring, and they'd have no idea I was trying to reach them. Since caller it didn't exist yet, I just figured they weren't home and kept trying. These days if I left my phone to just ring and ring with no voicemail and no return call, not answering texts, people would probably start to panic and worry about me. Somehow it just became the norm to be constantly reachable no matter where you are and when it is. People don't call each other unexpectedly. It's now polite to text first, or schedule a specific time to talk on the phone. I've found this is now true even in business. People email or IM to ask if it's a good time for a call, or say please call me at your earliest convenience rather than just ringing the phone themselves. Even senior management doesn't call me on a whim. This is a really good example. Part of me wonders if it's because of how frustrating it gets to play phone tag all day. Normalizing online dating. When it was new, everyone thought it would get you murdered, but now, tons of people do it. In the early 2000s, parents had mistaken belief that the internet is just for fun. Now even official gov dealings can be done only on internet. I've only had a few job interviews that took place in person. I think maybe 3, and I've gone to a frick ton. I walk into places that have a flyer and introduce myself, and they tell me to go back home and apply online. My older family members think it's crazy that I don't stay to fill out an application there, but they literally don't let you. The automation of the hiring process and how it's made getting work harder. Used to be a human being would sit down and talk with you to get an idea of your hireability. Now we get multiple page personality quizzes that basically screen for how exploitable you are and give no feedback. People's independence with regard to directions. It's rare now to stop and ask someone how to get somewhere, and we tend to take GPS navigation for granted. The transition from maps to MapQuest to GPS units to smartphones which built navigation into our pockets happened so quickly. And yet people are still afraid of getting lost. Texting you're at someone's house instead of ringing the doorbell. I love Steve Irwin, and his death was a terrible tragedy, but when he first became popular pretty much everyone expected something terrible to happen to him someday. Nature shows at the time were mostly about filming wildlife from afar without interfering. The crocodile hunter was the first guy I remember to get in and interact all close and personal, often with creatures we viewed as very dangerous. Viewers especially loved when crocs would get agitated and snap at him. He's a ridiculously charming nature lover, but everyone who watched when it first came out basically said, "Come look at this crazy guy. He's going to get his arm bit off someday for sure." He became so popular it basically changed the format of nature shows since. Now we have tons of proud hillbilly shows wrangling snapping turtles and whatever. I remember someone saying to my dad in the late 90s that Steve would get eaten by a croc one day. My dad just said, "Nah, a croc won't get him. He knows crocs. It'll be something else that he doesn't know as well, where he lets his guard down and gets too close." Lo and behold. Micropayments. I remember a decade ago everyone fretting how anyone would ever be able to charge just $1 for something online. Between PayPal, Amazon, app stores, and stored credit cards in browsers, no longer seems to be an issue. That and large platforms for selling almost anything anyone would want to pay small amounts of money for: software, music, written work, etc. Internet shopping is basically a digital version of those impulse buy shelves at checkouts. People dropping by to visit without notifying you they're coming. When I was a kid, it was so exciting when people came by just to say hi, and we loved it. Now, when the doorbell rings and it's not pizza, UPS, or Jimmy John's, we are pretty sure someone is there to kill us. Protesting about petrol prices. The whole of Europe was up in arms with blockades everywhere because the price was getting to £1 a litre. They went down and we'd won, then the media stopped covering it and no one gave a crap when it went way past that just a few months later. Not so long ago, the thought of test tube babies horrified people. They were lobbying to have it stopped. IVF is now an everyday thing and nobody really questions it. I think the phrase test tube baby is used to conjure thoughts of a lab filled with large cylindrical glass vats containing fetuses floating in some strange liquid, science water. Then people realized that the babies were carried to term and birthed just like any other child, and were more okay with it. The ease of being able to just look something up on the spot. The idea of going to a library or searching through books to find the answer to that random thing that's nagging at you is almost unthinkable now that we have Google and Wikipedia. I love how we can just read through entire Wikipedia entries on very specific subjects like shell structures of deep-sea radiolarians just on our phones, or even read entire PhD theses from some university on other side of the world. Work attire slowly becoming more and more relaxed. My father is a real conservative dude in how he lives his life, dresses, etc. But frick was he thrilled when he longer had to wear a blazer, tie, and trench coat everywhere in the winter. This is actually the opposite in my profession as a mechanic. Shirts with collars, tucked in, neat belt, have to match your boots. Seems like when I started years ago you could show up in worn out Levi's and a plain white t-shirt and you'd be golden. Dressing up for flights. We used to wear suits, goddammit. I read that as dressing up for fights and immediately thought, holy crap, the past was awesome. Clowns are scary and skeletons are funny. I'm an old sucker and let me assure you, clowns have always been scary. Workplaces and companies doing their hiring with those ridiculous online application software to intake CVs and do automated keyword scanning and hoping that the hiring manager will see yours and have it stand out from the rest to have a small chance of getting the job through an interview, regardless of how actually qualified you are, when in reality most of the submitted forms and CVs aren't even considered due to the sheer volume and software algorithms, as well as hiring managers either not knowing exactly what they're looking for or already having someone they will hire but put out the job posting to waste everyone else's time. Like, really? What's worse is that even after you submit your CV, you still have to fill out all the form info that is already included in your CV so it follows the hiring company's preferred format and intake of information. It's a big time waster for almost everyone, so the only real chance one would have at getting a job is through connections, which makes it really hard if it's your first job or if you're doing a bit of a career leap switch. Not having to take out piercings or cover tattoos in the service industry anymore. We stopped letting our kids out in public unsupervised. Crime started rising in the 70s, peaked in the late 90s, and has consistently been dropping into present day. Even though we're at levels we had before the 60s, we can't imagine giving our kids the autonomy that children in the 70s had. Going from saying I'm gonna send this into America's funniest home videos to I'm gonna put this on YouTube. I have an anecdote that is kind of interesting. About 10 years ago my then 5-year-old son bought several games on his mom's phone. When she saw the new games she said, "Boy's name, these games cost money." He looked at her incredulously and said, "How can you put money in a phone?" Last week my 3-year-old nieces, twins, got a Christmas card with a $20 bill in it. Excitedly, they yelled, "Mom, he got us a ticket." They had never seen cash before. When she told them it was money, they both just studied the heck out of those bills. So in less than 10 years, there was some sort of shift in the concept of money in our family. Told you it was anecdotal. We've stopped listening to experts and become our own experts. I did my research used to mean a thesis. Now it's 15 minutes on Google. That you never make a plan with someone and stick to it. My friend's dad traveled to London in his youth. Not a word of English, and was met at the designated London rail station on a particular date at a particular time by his Irish-speaking brother, all arranged a month before by letter. Now we just text that morning, we can't commit to a certain meeting in a month's time. Kids have sleepovers with their friends way less. I don't have kids, but after speaking with relatives and friends, apparently parents are allowing this less and less. People afraid of being accused of pedo stuff? What's the deal? Death of couch multiplayer. They can log on to XBLA from their home. The entire internet shift since 4G LTE. Like, on one hand we acknowledge it, but at the same time, we don't really fully seem to acknowledge how radically culture has shifted since LTE and smartphones put always connected internet in everyone's pocket. I mean, for one thing, people still say the internet isn't a necessity, but they haven't actually looked around in the last couple years to see that nearly half of the world we engage with requires the internet. We've become so plugged in that we don't even see the plugs anymore. Geeks became mainstream, and with it, so did shipping, and Comic-Con. Used to be more of a weird corner of the internet. Now it's the standard. Or maybe I just think it is because it's the only place I hang out. Shipping is pretty easy now with 2-day Prime. People use the action of looking at phone screens as a crutch when faced with awkward situations. BDSM seems pretty vanilla these days. When I was younger, it seemed like all stores commerce were closed all day on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Fast forward to the present day, seems like nearly all fast food places are open for most part of the day. Most retail places are open either Thanksgiving morning or no later than late afternoon. And most gas stations and a lot of fast food places are open on Christmas. FaceTime. Video calls were supposed to be something from the Jetsons, and it would be so huge that we'd all have a video call phone in our homes. Then one day I realized someone was FaceTiming at the grocery store. It was just a normal thing. I rewatched Star Trek TNG and just noticed that, for the first time in my 20 years of fandom, I didn't think anything of them carrying around tablets and smartphone looking devices. Back when the show was new, this was futuristic. No paper, just digital tablets. Now I caught myself thinking, oh, those tablets look so bulky. The iPad is much smaller now. A transition to informality. People are leaving off formal practices, institutions and styles for a more casual approach to life. For example, more people are cohabitating instead of going through the hoops of marriage. Business dress codes are relaxing. Hierarchical institutions are going by the wayside, etc. You have been visited by the doggo of dandy rides. Like this video and have a dandy day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.